Alright, so can you state your name and spell it for the camera?
My full name is James Edward Schulte. It's S-C-H-U-L-T-E.
Alright. Okay, so when were you born? What year were you born?
I was born March 6, 1951,
Alright, where was that at?
St. Louis.
St. Louis. So did you live there your whole life, or did you kind of...
I lived in the St. Louis area until 1975.
Okay.
Then I moved to Jefferson City.
Okay. How many siblings did you have? Or were you the only child?
No, there were 5 of us, and one died at birth.
Do you have two parents? Both your parents?
Both my parents, they both passed away last year, about 4 months apart.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So did you know anything about the military as your child? Like, was your dad in the military? Was your mom in the military? Or?
My dad was in the Navy in World War II.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was in the Army in World War I.
So you were kind of a military family-ish?
Well, actually not. My dad, his favorite TV shows were the ones that made fun of the military.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
McHale's Navy and F Troop and all of
Yeah.
those. But my grandpa was a very serious veteran, and I think some of that wore off more.
Yeah. Did was your dad like drafted into the World War II, or did he enlist and just...
He is, I recall, enlisted right at the very end. It was like the last year of the war.
Oh, okay.
He enlisted in the Navy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So did you go through all the way to high school? Did you go through college and all that, or did you go to the military after high school?
I graduated high school, had started college, and I'll take you back to, I graduated from high school in 1969,
Yeah.
and there was a draft then, and it was 1970 on a lottery system.
Yeah.
And I had a very high lottery number, 336, I believe. But my best friend growing up in high school, he had a single-digit lottery number,
Yeah.
and he knew he was going to get drafted, so
Yeah.
we talked about going in the Army Reserves together, and that's what we ended up
You guys
doing.
enlisted together?
Enlisted together, yes.
So you went into the Army? You said?
Army Reserves.
Okay. So why you joined because of him, or you knew you were going to get drafted? So you decided?
No, I knew I was not going to get drafted. There was no way, but I also felt an obligation to
Yeah.
do something, and so it was an easy choice for me to choose it.
Okay. Did you leave behind like a girlfriend or anything like that, or was it?
I had a girlfriend, and we ended up afterwards getting married.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Do you have any kids?
I have 2. I have a son and a daughter.
Okay. So why did you choose the Army Reserve?
It was probably as much just an opportunity and what they offered at the time. I didn't have any hard decisions about any branch of the service.
Yeah.
And at that time, I should say that the Vietnam War was going on, and as a young 18-year-old man, I was probably influenced by the news media and what was going on. The war was not very popular.
Yeah.
And then one of the guys I went to high school with had joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, and he came home with one leg, and
Yeah.
he said, "Man, it's messed up. You don't want to do that." So I listened to them and
Just
did not go active duty.
Yeah. So like, how did you get to your, like, what kind of training did you do once you joined the Army Reserve?
Well, I was part of an experimental program that I went through my basic training, and I did a leadership course, and then I did a infantry advanced training, and then we rolled right into drill sergeant school. And it was a test program at that time to see if it would work or not. And so we became drill sergeants at a very young age.
That's kind of good. So, I know like these days Army Reserve, they train like 3 times a month maybe.
It's 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year.
Okay. What's your do you remember like anything in your training, like any vivid memories, like a story?
Probably on a humorous side, when we were, part of the training is you have to go out in the field and spend several days in the field and overnight. And at that period of time, they were going through equipment changes, so everybody carried a half a tent in their pack. It was called a shelter half, like a little pup tent. And the old ones had buttons that fastened them together, and the new ones had snaps. And about half our company had buttons and the other half had snaps. So it's pouring down rain and we're trying to find out, do you have buttons or snaps, so we
Yeah.
could partner up and room. Because nobody was gonna get a tent pitched until you got
Yeah.
one that matched.
All right. What was the best part of your training?
I think it was the fact that it taught us a sense of teamwork
Yeah.
more than anything else.
Mhm.
Nothing in school curriculum or anything we have teaches teamwork,
Mhm.
other than some organized sports.
Yeah.
But other than that, it taught us about teamwork and being part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah. What was the work? Was there like a lot of physical strain in your training? Did you have to do a lot of like exercises and all that?
Oh yeah, every day. We were up at 5 o'clock in the morning and fell out and did our morning physical fitness
Mhm.
training, and then a lot of marching everywhere. I went into infantry, so it was road marches all the time.
So do you think that's the worst part of it, or was it not too bad for you?
It wasn't bad. I actually was in pretty good shape when I went in, and didn't have any problems with it. I actually enjoyed the training.
That's good. Like, was there like any instructor that was kind of like, no, like he was like mean, or were all yours kind of?
Well, when you first meet drill sergeants, you think they're
Yeah.
all mean
Yeah.
and they hate you,
Mhm.
but that's all part of the psychology behind teaching you that it's not all about you and you're not an individual anymore. You're
Mhm.
part of a team, and so they come down harder on people that try to show off and
Yeah.
do their own thing.
Okay. So you said you went into infantry training after that?
Yes.
So is that kind of like a farther step than what normal Army Reserve people go through?
No, everybody goes through a basic training
Yeah.
together,
Mhm.
and then after that you go to advanced individual training. It's called AIT,
Mhm.
and that's where you get your military occupational skill, MOS.
Okay.
And I mean, you have supply people and radio people and medics, all the different MOSs. After basic, you go to whichever one you're assigned, and then I went through the infantry training.
Okay. Like, what equipment did you have back then? Like, what? Because I know like the M4 is a standard rifle that's issued to the soldiers today. What was was it the M16
It
back
was
then?
brand new, was the M16,
Okay.
had just been introduced, and that was what we trained on there.
Okay. Did you receive any promotions through the Army Reserve throughout your career?
Oh yes, in fact, because I was in the drill sergeant program early
Yeah.
on, we accelerated, and as soon as I was eligible for the next promotion, I was
You
promoted.
went for okay.
So all the way up to sergeant E5.
Okay. So how do those go? Like, you start out as a
Started as an E1 private. E stands for enlisted,
okay.
and then there's E1 is private, or E2 is a private E2, E3 is a private first class.
Mhm.
E4 you could either be a specialist or a corporal. E5 is sergeant.
Okay.
E6 is staff sergeant. It goes up to E9.
Yeah. Okay. What was the hardest part of where did you go? Were you still live in Missouri when you were in the Army Reserve, or were you stationed somewhere else?
I was in an Army Reserve unit in St. Louis.
Okay.
So we did our weekend drills at the armory.
Yeah. So you still got to live at home?
Right.
And did you have a job did you have a just normal 9 to 5 day job during the week?
Well, when I came back, then I went to college.
Okay.
And I
So
went to, I did junior college at
Mhm.
Florissant Valley Community College down there.
okay.
And then after that, I applied for the Highway Patrol and went through the Highway Patrol Academy and became a Missouri Highway Patrolman.
So did you do that all the way up till retirement? Did you do that and then do something else, or did you?
I was a Highway Patrolman 5 years,
Mhm.
and then I left that and went to work for a private investigating company. And then when I moved to Jefferson City in 1975, the Highway Patrol stationed me here. I switched from the Army Reserves to the National Guard and got
Okay.
into Missouri National Guard.
So what's the difference of the Army Reserves and the Missouri National Guard?
The Army Reserves is controlled by federal government and the president.
Okay.
The National Guard belongs to the governor of the state.
Yeah.
So the governor calls the National Guard up for state emergencies, floods, tornadoes, things like that. But the president can also activate National Guard units. They're dual purpose.
So the Army Reserve was for a war? Like if you were needed in a war, or was
Primarily, that's what they use for.
and the National Guard's kind of for anything that goes on in the state that they
In the United States, our can be mobilized for deployment overseas as well.
Okay. So you said you served in St. Louis. So did you have a family during that, or did you marry your girlfriend after you got out of it, or while you were in the National or the Army Reserve?
We got married in 1974, and that was right before I moved here with the Highway Patrol.
Okay. So like, what was your normal week when you were in the Army Reserve? Like, what did you do during the week when you weren't training, or over the weekend, or?
Well, there I was a college student.
So
I was going to college full-time or part-time, working a part-time job,
Mm-hmm.
and my parents believed that they didn't have a lot of money to put us through college and believed we should work. So I lived at home and then worked part-time jobs, just odd jobs, and then went to college and until I got my associate's degree.
Okay. Like, so you said camaraderie was like the big thing that you learned. Do you have any friendships that you still have today with people that you went through training with?
Not basic training anymore. My best friend died of a heart attack, and so it was right after one of our high school reunions. But other than that, not too many from that era.
Okay. Do you have any friends? So, I just asked that question. Like, so you said you still lived with your family, so you didn't have to like send letters or to your family since you were just living with your family.
Living at home, right?
Yeah.
Just while you were in training, at basic training in your AIT, then we wrote.
Where was your
back and
basic
forth.
training at?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Oh, so you're not in Missouri?
No.
Okay. Do you have any like humorous stories or unusual events from any time throughout your career?
Several.
You want to tell any of those, or are they too?
I have a lot of good memories and funny
Yeah.
things that happened along the way. I'll tell one story on myself. I was in the National Guard at this point, and I shot on the National Guard rifle and pistol team.
Yeah.
And we were at national championships, and one of my best friends and I, we'd shot that morning and decided to go for a run.
Mm-hmm.
So we were out for our run, and a staff car went by us, and the guy driving it was the captain of the rifle team, and we hadn't seen him, so we'd been there a few days, and we thought, he pulled over, and we thought, well, he just wants to stop and talk and see how we're doing and compare notes, and my friend looked at me and he said, let's run over him. And just like that, we hit the bumper, the trunk, over the roof, down the front end of the car. I mean, we were probably both about 200 pounds, so it was rocking the car pretty good. And we got clear of the car, and I turned around and looked, and there was a red license plate on the front with 2 stars, which meant there was a 2-star general in the back seat of the car.
So did you get in trouble for that?
I thought that'd probably be the end of my career right there. I fully expected to be sent home. General had a great sense of humor and laughed about it and wished us luck.
That was good.
So yeah, I was very fortunate.
Well, like, did you do anything for good luck while you were like in those rifle? Like, did you have any like, what's the word, like
A ritual you follow?
Yeah, ritual you follow for like the.
No, I'm really not superstitious. What I did learn is that I would watch and I would talk to the people that were winning and ask them what they did, and then adopt. And usually it's not any magic or secret. They're very systematic about how they do everything and prepare for it. And if you just follow a procedure and steps, you'll set yourself up for success that way.
So when was the day that you got out of the Missouri National Guard?
It was April 1st, 2013.
So did you retire, like you're done working after that, or did you do some?
I was 62 years old. That was mandatory retirement.
Oh, it is, okay.
And I went to work for the National Guard full-time in 1986. So I was a full-time employee there.
So what did you do while you worked at the National Guard?
I had several different jobs. I started out working there. I was in the marksmanship program and worked in that when I was still a weekender. And then in the middle 80s, the Reagan administration had started rebuilding our military, and several people called me up and said, "Hey, we've got some full-time jobs here that might be of interest to you." So I applied and was hired, and worked in logistics and ammunition, and then I went from there to the training and switched over to an aviation unit as a training NCO.
So who did you train? Did you train like new people to come into the National Guard? Did you was it more of an advanced class?
No, at that point, my job as the training NCO at a unit was to make sure that everybody got the training they needed and made sure they got into the schools they needed to go to and tracked all that. And then we also, during our weekend drills, set up the training for the unit and what the unit needed to do.
Okay.
And generally what we would do on weekends was work on individual skills, and then when you did your 2-week annual training, the unit came together and everybody took their individual skills and put them together collectively to make the unit work.
Okay.
And we would do exercises to test that.
Okay. So did your family support you going into the Army Reserve or the National Guard, or were they kind of hesitant about it?
Actually, I didn't tell them about it till after I joined, but they were fine
They were
after
fine
that.
with it, okay.
Yes.
So you said you went back to a junior college and got your degree. Did you get a degree in?
I got an associate's degree in liberal arts, just a general 2-year.
Yeah. Okay.
No major, no anything
Yeah.
special, just all the fundamental courses.
So how did you being in the National Guard, how did that change you?
Well, it definitely taught me that there's more to life than just you and yourself and what you do as an individual. One of the principles of leadership is selfless service, and you help other people and work with other people.
Did you join any veteran organizations, or did you kind of just go away from them?
I'm a life member of the VFW
Okay.
and the Combat Infantry Association.
Do you attend any reunions with like any of your friends back from the?
Not from any of that.
Yeah.
The National Guard has an annual birthday ball.
You usually attend that?
Try to, yes.
Okay. How did your military services experience, how did it affect your life? Did you?
Well, I'd like to think it made me a better person, a better citizen.
There's that. So, Hank told me that you led some he said something about hunting. Do you do anything with veterans for hunting?
Right. I host a wounded warrior hunt out at my place a couple times a year. We do turkey season, and then we did archery deer and turkey season this fall. I've been working with a group out of southwest Missouri that they work through the chaplains corps and work with wounded warriors.
So what do you do on those hunting? Is it like a weekend thing, or is it?
We do a 3-day weekend at my place. They usually come up Friday and hunt through Sunday, and then go back wherever they came from.
Yeah. Okay, so go back a little bit. I forgot a couple questions. So, was your advanced training in the same place, or did you get sent somewhere different? So your basic training was in
Fort Jackson, and my advanced infantry training was in Fort Jackson as well.
Okay, so you didn't move anywhere.
No.
And while you were there, did you send letters to your family, or was it kind of just
Oh, we wrote back and forth.
Okay. Because back then they didn't really.
There weren't cell phones, there wasn't Skype, there wasn't any of that.
So you just had to send letters back and
Right.
forth. And was your a little bit more personal? Was your relationship with your girlfriend, did that change at all, or did you guys?
No.
You sent letters back with her, and you guys stayed kind of same you were
Right.
when you left. Okay. I think that's my teacher coming in to look at us or something. So when you were in the Army Reserve, what do you do when you're in the Army Reserve? Do you kind of just do your normal life and?
Well, on your weekend drills, it depends on what your job is on there and what you're doing. I was a drill instructor, so we trained and prepared to do that, and then in our 2-week annual training, we went to an active Army installation and filled in on the basic training company with the active duty drill sergeants.
So if you were ever like, if something ever like when would you ever be called, like if an Army Reserve to like, go to a war, like would something like really bad have to happen?
Yes. After Vietnam, there wasn't much call up for anybody. Then Desert Shield and Desert Storm, they started calling up Reserve and National Guard. And then Operation Enduring Freedom is where the Guard Reserves got heavily engaged.
Yeah. So you were never like over in a different country during your service, you were always in the United States?
Oh no, I've been to Afghanistan 6 times. I've been to 22 different countries.
So did you, when you were in Afghanistan, what did you do? Like how long were you there?
Well, my first tour, I was there for a year, and I was an embedded trainer with the Afghan Army. So we lived with the Afghan Army and taught them how we do what we do in the United States Army.
So you went through 6 deployments over there?
I went 2 deployments and then 4 other trips over there to do either mission planning, or else my last 4 years I worked directly for the Adjutant General, and we did morale visits to the troops that were on tours over there.
So the morale visits, what did those, how those kind of go down? Like what did you do with those?
Well, we would go see the units we had overseas, and generally it was around the holidays, Thanksgiving or Christmas, and just let them know that we were thinking about them, cared about them, and see if there was anything they needed that we could help out with, either at home or over there.
Yeah. So when you were, during the Vietnam War, you were in the Army Reserve?
Right.
So you didn't do anything in Vietnam?
No.
You never went over there?
No.
You think that's like a good thing you didn't go over there, since it was like one of the worst wars?
You know, you can hindsight and say, what if?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I guess the Lord had His own plan for me, and it didn't include that, so
Yeah.
I won't second guess anything about that.
So you never saw like actual combat in like when you went to Afghanistan?
Oh yeah.
You saw actual combat?
Yes. I was an infantry advisor to the Afghan Army, and so yes.
Do you have any
I
stories
was
you wanna
along
share
the
of that,
Pakistan border.
Do you have any stories you want to share of that?
Nothing significant or
No.
monumental.
So
We worked every day with the Afghan Army, and at that time I was a sergeant major, and we had 4 provinces along the Pakistan border, and it was a very active zone, and so it was a busy year.
Yeah. So were the Afghan, were they trained well beforehand, or was it kind of hard to train them?
Their training was pretty simplistic. And they're people, they grew up fighting. That's all they've ever known.
Yeah.
For centuries they've been fighting. But their army was a kind of a melting pot, because back in the days in the 70s, 79 through 80s, when Russia occupied Afghanistan, most of their military then went through Soviet training. And then after the Russians left, there was civil war, and then after we came in, they started rebuilding the country. Well, the military then was made up of a lot of people that were former Army officers and service members that had been trained by the Russians, and now they were being trained by us, so it was an interesting melting pot. Plus, a number of the officers we dealt with were former Mujahideen rebels that fought against the ones that were in the regular army then.
So why did they change sides? Did they realize something, or do you think they?
Well, no, the country changed.
Yeah.
You have to remember that the Soviet army occupied that country for 10 years. Then they went through civil war when the Soviets left, and then we came in because Al-Qaeda was there, and they wouldn't release Osama bin Laden to the United States, so we went in to get Osama bin Laden, who the Taliban at that time were protecting. And so we ended up driving all of them out, and then helping them form a new government. And when they formed their new government, they welcomed all Afghan citizens in good standing to join their army. So some of them were former Soviet trained military, and some of them were rebels from the local villages.
So like, what were the Afghans, like the Afghan army, what was their standard issue, like equipment? Like what did they have?
Well, their standard rifle was AK-47s. They were heavily influenced by the Soviet armament, and then at that time there were a lot of them available, so they had AK-47s and a lot of Soviet equipment. They're now using M4s. They're converting all that over. There wasn't a lot of equipment to begin with.
Yeah.
We drove around in Ford Ranger pickup trucks. We didn't have armored vehicles or any of that. And it was like a fledgling army. I kind of imagined it must have been a lot like what George Washington went through, putting together the Continental Army.
Yeah. So in that time when you were training the Afghan army, did you have were you issued with a gun and all that? Did you ever go on any combat missions?
Yes.
You did? Do you have any
We were issued individually. We had Beretta pistols and we had M4 rifles.
So M4s were around?
Right. Oh yeah.
Okay. I don't know when the...
Yeah, this was in 2005 is when I was there.
So, if you don't mind me asking, did you ever get shot at, or did you ever have to...
Yes.
You got in gunfights?
Yes.
Do you have any stories you want to share of that?
Not really. It was just people shoot at you. You
Yeah.
try and shoot back and suppress them or get rid of them. But yeah, it was kind of like an active zone.
Yeah.
And closer to Pakistan border, we were right there. I walked the same grounds, and if you look at the history of Afghanistan, you had Alexander the Great went in, Genghis Khan went in, and walked all the same ground as a lot of those things that you read about in the history books.
So, what was your base called over there in Afghanistan? Where you stayed at?
My first tour was, we were in Gardez, and our base camp, we actually built it while I was there, and we called it Camp Lightning. And the Afghan Army Corps we were supporting, there are 5 corps. With the corps we were supporting was called the Thunder Corps, 203rd Thunder Corps.
What do they do, the Afghan Army?
Well, their whole goal was to secure the peace of the area and protect the people and the citizens and fight the Taliban.
Okay. My questions just went through my mind.
We can back up and regroup. We skipped a lot of years.
What all countries did you go? You said you went to 22 different countries?
I've been to 22 different countries.
So what was your favorite, favorite country you went to?
I liked South Africa. That was pretty interesting.
What did you do in South Africa?
I actually went over there to shoot in their national rifle championships in what year was that? 95.
So how long were you over there for that?
Just 3 weeks.
3 weeks. So what did you do? Just competition shooting?
It was competition shooting. They were national rifle championships. The apartheid had just been lifted. We had sanctions against them, and that had all been lifted. Nelson Mandela was the new president, and we were some of the first Americans that they invited in. Definitely the first military that had come in and competed in their rifle championships. They were just really friendly, great hosts, took good care of us.
So were there other countries in that competition, or was it kind of just...
all of the other countries that were involved there were from close by surrounding countries. Okay, Namibia, maybe Tanzania, some of those nearby surrounding countries.
Okay. So you said we skipped over a few years, you want to recollect what happened in those few years?
Well, when I moved here in 1975 and joined the National Guard, I transferred from the Army Reserves to the National Guard. I got involved in competitive shooting with the National Guard and spent 8 or 9 years in the marksmanship program, teaching and competing, training other people in firearms training. And then I switched over to an aviation group, became their training NCO. And then after that I went to the National Guard Military Academy as an instructor and training NCO. So when I went from being a weekend soldier, just 2 weeks a year, and to 1 weekend a month, to working full time for them. That was in 1985.
So Do you remember like where you were when 9/11 happened?
I was at work at the Ike Skelton training site. At that time, I was the uh, sergeant major over the training and operations division.
Yeah. So your first year in Afghanistan, you said was
2005.
2005, and then did you serve like in foreign countries until like where you went to foreign countries until when?
Well, the National Guard, one of the unique things, especially with the Missouri Guard, is we have a lot of engineers and MPs. And so there were opportunities for us to go overseas and train and do things.
Mhm.
So we did road projects in Panama and Honduras, Guatemala. We actually did a project took several years in Alaska. And so we had other countries we worked with doing things like that. Our engineers would go in and build roads, and the MPs would provide security. And then I went to South Africa with the marksmanship team. I went to England and shot in their national championships. Trying to think of some of the duty assignments it took me. When we traveled through a lot of other countries on the way in and out of places.
So, like, what do you wish more people knew about veterans?
I wish more people knew what the real sacrifices were, being away from family. And it's really hard on the families. I wish they understood what it was like for the families when the soldiers are gone. It was easier for us, I thought, because when I was over there, I knew what I was doing every day and I knew what was going on.
With your family?
My wife was back here, my parents are back here. They don't know what's going on but what they see on the news, and it's generally bad.
Yeah.
So they don't fully understand what's going on, and it puts a lot of stress on them.
So like anyone that like wants to join the military, like what tips would you give them for joining the military?
Well, I would encourage them, if they have an interest, to see which branch appeals to them the most. Look at all of them. There's, you have the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Marines, and the Coast Guard, and look at all of them and see which one fits you the best that you think. Talk to veterans that have been there and done it, not just recruiters, but
people who actually see the.
and I don't want to sound anti-recruiter.
Yeah.
They have a job to get people in, so. But talk to people that have been there and done it, and see. But if you're looking for something just easy to have a good time with, you're not going to find it there.
Yeah,
it's going to challenge you, but when you're challenged, you grow.
Yeah. So the Cold War was happening in was it the 80s? Or was it
70s and
70s?
80s, yeah.
So did you have anything to do with the Cold War, or were you?
Well, the Cold War was primarily just the standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union, and we had, our strength and which went back and forth, but primarily during the Cold War it involved mostly active duty units. The National Guard at that time, what we mostly did was at home for disasters.
Yeah. Did you have to? Were you like? Did the governor ever send you or your men to somewhere in Missouri to help with any disasters?
Sure. The floods, anytime there was a flood that they called up the National Guard, we got involved. The Joplin tornado was the biggest one, the most traumatic one probably, but the floods were big too, and a lot of other smaller tornadoes and things that occurred. Ice storms, there were some ice storms that took a lot of power out for people, and the National Guard would come in with generators and other equipment to help the citizens get back on the ground or get their feet back on the ground.
So the flood in '93, like, you were in Jeff City already?
I was.
What did you guys do for the flood in '93?
Filled a lot of sandbags.
Okay. Yeah, is that about it for you for floods?
At that point in my career, I think I was probably a sergeant first class. And I was I think at that time I was at the training academy as an instructor, so the engineer units and the MPs again, and the trucking units
Yeah.
had the lion's share of the work on that.
Yeah.
Filling sandbags, hauling sandbags, and keeping security on the areas.
So the Joplin tornado, I remember that. It was a really bad tornado. So what did you guys really do during that?
Well, I was the state sergeant major then, and so I worked directly for the adjutant general. We coordinated and traveled down there a lot to make sure that the troops were getting what they needed. We coordinated with all the federal and state emergency personnel that were working on reestablishing. First we had to take care of all the people that were injured. Then you had a lot of people without homes that needed shelter, and then there was no electricity, no running water through those areas, and a lot of debris removal and cleanup had to be coordinated.
So for the people who didn't have shelter, what did you guys do? Did you guys set up like in schools, gymnasiums, or like?
Initially, there was some of that, but then FEMA came in and brought in shelters and trailers and things like
So
that.
what are those, like the shelters were just like pop-up trailers kind of things?
Actually, a little better than a pop-up camper, but they were little camper trailers that they set up a village and for people that. And the thing about Joplin was it's in an area and a community where there's a lot of family outlying and stuff. So there was a lot of family support helping people there. Unlike New Orleans when you had Katrina, which took out so many people and nowhere to go, and they had to flee the whole southern half of the state.
Okay, is there anything you want to add that we didn't cover during the interview? Like any stories or anything?
No, I had a very good career, and I ended up spending 41 years. I joined for 6 and stayed 41. It was never dreamed or believed it would happen. But like I said, sometimes we're led down paths which we don't plan.
Yeah.
And it worked well. I will say on my second tour to Afghanistan, I was part of an experimental program to reestablish agriculture in Afghanistan.
So what was your
And I think I was primarily selected because I had been down there for, had a year prior to that. And one of the things that happened in '79 when the Soviets invaded, a lot of people don't realize, but Afghanistan was exporting fruits and vegetables all over the Middle East. But the roads were very small and primitive. They did a lot of travel by horse and ox cart and small vehicles. The Soviet equipment couldn't navigate, negotiate through a lot of that, and the rebels used that to ambush them. So the Soviets came in, destroyed the irrigation system, cut down the orchards, destroyed the crops, and made the people dependent on them for food. Their thinking was that if you want to eat, you have to come to us for it, and you'll have to play nice to get your food. So that's what they did. So for 10 years, the agriculture basin of Afghanistan was destroyed. And then after that, there was civil war, and then the Taliban came in, and they were still fighting, and so you had almost 20 years of the ground being left go, and with no treatment, no cultivating, no anything, and then a lot of that knowledge of how to do that was lost.
So you kind of taught them how to...
So we put together a program. Missouri was the first ones to do this, and it was an experiment, but we went into the Nangarhar province, which is the last place that Osama bin Laden was seen alive before he left Afghanistan. But we went in, and they had several areas of that were they were like Southern California, very good climates and good land. We reestablished irrigation systems. We tried to bring them up to some more modern techniques and standards of growing fruits and vegetables again, and doing that and irrigating the land to do it. And there were, I think, we were the first state, and I think 11 other states followed us, taking on other provinces. And we did that. We set it up as a 5-year program that we would work the same province with Missouri Guard soldiers for 5 years. And we took people that had agriculture backgrounds. Several of them had degrees in agriculture from the university here, worked in that field. Some of them were people that just grew up on farms and knew how to do it on a on a first-hand basis, and we worked with the Afghan people to help them rebuild that part of their country.
So like today in Afghanistan, is their agriculture back to like what it was before all that happened?
I don't think it's back to where it was before, but it's come back a great deal and it's improved immensely.
Okay.
And the other thing it did was while we were there working in Nangarhar, prior to us being there, Nangarhar was one of the top poppy producers in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And when we left, by 2006, the inspectors had ruled that Nangarhar was almost poppy free.
Okay.
So we gave them another means to survive.
Yeah. All right, well, that's about all I have, so I just want to thank you for letting me interview you, and thank you for your service that you did to our country.
You're welcome.
All right,
Thank you for doing this. Yeah.
All right, this camera works, I think.